Horns up and welcome to a brand new episode of Headbanger's Kitchen. If it isn't obvious to you folks yet, I love to eat good food and I love to cook good food as well. I love my food and there are many great chefs who have inspired me over the years, and one of those chefs is Gordon Ramsay. So I thought to myself, why don't I recreate one of Gordon's dishes and make a keto version of it and just see how it turns out and see if we can have amazing master chef quality food on the keto diet. And you know what? I don't see any reason why we should not. So I've taken one of my favorite Gordon Ramsay recipes, pork chops with sweet and sour peppers, and I'm going to make my own keto version of that today. Anyway, enough jibber jabber, let's go and make Gordon Ramsay's pork chops with sweet and sour peppers, done the Headbanger's Kitchen keto way. So I asked my dad to pick up some pork chops from our local butcher and he got me some nice looking pork chops. But I've got a big complaint with Indian butchers. There's something wrong in our butchery. It's done very differently, and these pork chops had this weird bone on the end of it which was cut through and it had shattered, and you get little pieces of bone then when you're eating. Also, because it's not even bone, it kind of cooks unevenly in the pan. So I decided to fillet these pork chops. So with a little bit of knife twisting and some better butchery than I've done in the past, I managed to fillet the pork chops. And once I was done filleting them, I was left with a bag of pork bones from which I'm going to make some pork stock, the fillet itself, and some meat trimmings, the little parts of meat on the sides of the bone which I couldn't get out in one clean motion when I was filleting. Anyway, once I was done with that, I decided to butcher it a little bit more and cut out the ends of the pork chop so I had nice eye fillets of pork chop. And then I seasoned the pork chops with salt and with pepper on both sides, and be generous with that seasoning. And then I took those pork chops and I cut through the fat on it, because this will prevent it from curling up in the frying pan apparently, and this is a very helpful tip given by Mr. Ramsay himself. Once I was done filleting and seasoning the pork, I moved on to the sweet and sour peppers. I started by chopping one red onion into half moons. And then I chopped up half a red bell pepper and half a yellow bell pepper, just into simple long strips. Once I was done with that, I got my pan on the stove and I heated up some olive oil. Once the pan was nice and hot, I threw in my red onion and bell peppers and I seasoned it with some salt and some pepper. And then I gave it all a good mix. Actually, I just did some flipping with the pan, kind of trying to emulate Gordon Ramsay in his video. Then I added 2 teaspoons of erythritol. Now you can add any keto sweetener that you like. I had this lying around, so I used this. Normally I would have gone with stevia. And then you just want to let everything cook. And remember, keep it on a nice high flame. You want the sizzling to not stop. You want to saute the onions and the peppers. After a minute or two, I added some white wine vinegar. Now the original recipe calls for red wine vinegar, but I'm pretty sure any vinegar will do the job. Then I added a nice big swig of some good extra virgin olive oil so that the peppers can stew in those juices. Then finally I chopped up some fresh basil and I put it in the peppers. And then of course I turned off the heat, and our peppers were pretty much ready, so I put them in a bowl and set them aside. Then in that same frying pan I heated up some more olive oil, and once it was nice and hot, I laid down those pork chops. And then I threw in a whole bunch of fresh thyme. And I also added some crushed garlic. And while that was frying, I added some butter along the sides of the pan. And then I flipped my pork chops. And oh, look at that beautiful color on them. They look gorgeous. And then you got to do what all chefs do. You got to take that butter and baste the meat. So that butter and that oil has got a lovely garlicky and a herby flavor from the thyme, and you just baste that pork in that lovely butter. And then finally I lay the pork chops on the fat side so that you can sort of caramelize that fat on the side and make that nice and crispy. This can be a bit tricky, especially when your pork chops are slightly uneven, but you know what? It worked. And oh yeah, those pork chops looked fantastic. I just let them cook a little bit longer and then I removed them from the pan. Now I know some people like to eat their pork medium rare, but I'm gonna stick with well done for now. Now once your pork chops are out, don't waste any of that garlic and thyme and that oil, just pour it out into another bowl. You can save that oil for later and you should eat that crispy garlic because it is delicious. And then it's time to plate up the pork chops. First I'm going to lay down those sweet and sour peppers. Then I'm going to put those pork chops on top of that. And then I'm going to add that crunchy garlic and thyme and just drizzle some of that oil on top of the pork chops. Oh man, does that look delicious or does that look delicious? Anyway, I cut into one of those pork chops and it was cooked perfectly. Gordon Ramsay's pork chops with sweet and sour peppers, done. Alright folks, so it's time to taste the pork chops with the sweet and sour peppers and I can't wait to dig in. But you know what I'm super excited about? This crispy fried garlic from the pan. Like this stuff, it's gold. Oh my god. Yummy. Pork chop. Get some of the peppers. There is a reason Gordon Ramsay is as famous as he is. And trust me, it's not because he uses the F word all of the time on TV. I mean, this recipe is banging. Like, that pork is juicy and the peppers, they just complement it so beautifully. That red onion. And you know what? I did the calculation. It's not even that many carbs. I think it's about 4 or 5 carbs at best if you eat a full serving, which is 25 grams of the red onion and 50 grams of the peppers. And yeah, this is beautiful. Like it is the kind of food I love eating. And yeah, I'm gonna go now. I'm gonna finish this, and I will see you on the next episode of Headbanger's Kitchen. Cheers and keep cooking. Hey, I'm glad you stuck around. Now, after I was done cooking the pork chops, I took some of that residual oil, put it back in the pan, and I fried up those meat trimmings from the filleting of the pork. I just threw them in the pan, seasoned it with a little bit of salt, some pepper, some dried herbs, just a random dried herb mix I had lying around, and I just cooked those trimmings. And you got yourself a chef's treat. That's literally what we call all these meat trimmings, a chef's treat. So folks, here are those lovely meat trimmings that I just fried up, and I'm going to taste one straight out of the pan. Oh my god. That's incredible. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I'm sorry I took so long to do it. Cheers.